All right, friends and neighbors, welcome back to another networking video. Hey, we have been talking about what's on my network, and we've been focusing on home networks, and we've covered layer 2, layer 3, and so today I thought we'd talk about layer 4, and we're coming to the end of this series, so we'll start building pretty quick here, but we probably ought to talk about applications, and so that begins with our layer 4 conversation. So here we go. Now it makes me a little sad as a network kind of guy to say that networking is not really about routers and switches and access points and protocols. I mean, those are all really, really important, but they're all part of infrastructure. So again, really fun, but not really the point of having a network. I mean, if you have this fabulous network of routers and switches, that's what you have. But really, the point is we want people to be able to communicate. We want applications to be able to talk to each other. So you need all that stuff, all that cabling and everything else is all part of what we call infrastructure, but it's not really the point. What we really want to understand is that we got all these applications that are talking to each other, and people are the ones using those applications. Now, applications move us up to layer 4, and that's because layer 4 uses the transport layer protocols, and these are the Transmission Control Protocol, TCP, and the User Datagram Protocol, or UDP. Even when we're talking about home networking, there are a couple of really, really good ideas to know or understand. And I assume that because you're on this channel that you're kind of jazzed about networking. And so when we move to layer 4 and when we start talking about applications, if you understand a couple of basic concepts, then you're much farther ahead in the game. So here we go. Here are some application highlights. First, all applications today utilize what's called the client-server model. And that means that one side is the client and one side is the server. And every single client-server connection, so this is you connecting to a website, you talking to your bank, you playing a game, you messaging somebody, every single one of those connections can be uniquely identified with 4 numbers. And that is the source and destination IP address and the source and destination port numbers. Now, there's a lot of rules with regard to port numbers and things like that. I will show you some examples, but clients use dynamic ports and servers listen to what we call the well-known or the system ports. Now, these 4 numbers constitute what we call a socket. And so we could say it's a TCP or UDP socket, but those 4 numbers are really what we care about. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, you are going to utilize some socket to establish your client-server connection. Now, another good idea to understand is that there are 2 types of applications or protocol or service. There are those that we consider part of the infrastructure. Those are the things that we need to operate. So the domain name service, DNS, dynamic host configuration protocol, DHCP, simple network management protocol. These are all examples of protocols that run whether we're doing applications or not, but your applications need them. You need them to even connect to a network. And then there's all the user applications. So all the things that you're typing in or using your mouse for or interacting in some way, those are user-based applications. So anything that runs in your browser, a game that you're playing, any communication that you're doing. So we call those the client applications. Now, every time you spin up a client communication or a client application, there are a whole bunch of support protocols that leap into action to help you get that stuff done. So as an example, you want to connect to the network. So the first thing that happens when you want to connect to the network is that you got to get an IP address. So you do that via DHCP. And then right away you want to log in and check your email. Well, before you can connect to your mail server, you've got to do a domain name service query to find the IP address of the destination to which you hope to connect. And so there's a very important set of infrastructure protocols that help you do that. And there's also a very specific order of operations. One thing must happen before the next, and so on and so forth. Lastly, your machine does a whole bunch of stuff without you doing a thing. So whether you're engaged in whatever you want to do, your machine is doing an awful lot of stuff. That's because your operating system is looking for services. Your operating system is checking for updates. If you've got applications with agents, they're phoning home to get their updates or see what's happening. Advertisements, et cetera, et cetera. So we call those agents, but those agents are involved in their own application connectivity, their own client server connections. Okay, so that's enough talking about this. I thought what we would do this time out is just do some stuff and we'll see what Wireshark has to say. So let's take a look. Now, since I've been talking to you this last couple of minutes, I just ran Wireshark and I'm not connected to the network at all. Well, I'm connected to the network. I'm not doing anything. So I don't have a browser open. I don't have anything like that. So if you look at my packet counter, right, it's screaming up here. I've got 9,565 packets at this point. That is just my machine doing stuff or other machines on my network doing stuff. Now, if we open up some of these, we can see, and maybe we'll do this. We'll take a look at our protocol hierarchy. Now, again, this is me. I'm not using a browser at this point. I'm not actually doing anything. But if we take a look here, there are an awful lot of protocols that are being used by my machine or by other machines on the network. So even though I don't have client-server applications, here we see TCP and UDP. We see an awful lot of UDP here. Look at all these different protocols that are existing on the network, even though I'm the only one actively connected right now, and even though I don't have applications opened up. Okay, so we'll close that. Let's take a look at we'll do conversations. And this time, instead of looking at Ethernet at layer 2 or IP at layer 3, we'll take a look at TCP and UDP. Now these are all the port numbers that we can see are being used. So there's port A and port B here. Maybe I'll expand these a little bit. And we can see that there's a lot of ports that are being used, at least on the client side. Now on the server side, we connect to a regular collection of service ports or server ports maybe. And then we've got UDP ports as well. Take a look at all of these different ports that are being seen on the network. Okay, so when you think about your connections, there's actually 3 layers of addressing that we think about. Each machine has a MAC address, a physical or hardware address. It's 6 bytes. It's a MAC address. Then at layer 3, we move to 4-byte IPv4 addresses. And now at layer 4, we move to port numbers. Let's take a closer look at what some of those look like. Here is an example of a TCP connection. And if I open up TCP, I can see the source and destination port number. So for this one connection, if I look at this, here are my source and destination MAC addresses for this particular connection. I'll close that. We'll look at the IP header. Here's the source and destination IP addresses. And then here are the source and destination port numbers. Now, for transmissions that are leaving your network, they will never, ever, ever learn, or the other side of this connection will never, ever learn the MAC addresses of the connection. What we care about here are the source and destination IP addresses and the source and destination port numbers. Those are the socket values, or those 4 numbers constitute the socket, and in this case it's a TCP socket. Okay, well, we can see that my machine was very, very busy here. One of the ways that you can see what's going on is you can run netstat, right? Whoops, you spell it right. And you can see where your machine is, establishing, or to where and to whom maybe your machine is establishing connection. Now, some of this is going to be what my operating system is doing, what my clients are doing, and so on. I might even be connecting to my printer and stuff like that. Okay, so that's an awful lot of just what is my machine doing, all by itself. And maybe what are the other machines that are awake on the network doing all by themselves. Let's see, I'm going to stop this one. Let's see what happens when I just want to connect to my printer. So we'll stop this and we'll start again. No, I don't care about saving this. And I'm just going to connect to my printer. Now, take a look here. I haven't done anything, right? This is all this stuff that's going on the network. But here we go. Let's talk to our printer. So here we are at my office jet. We happen to have a 4650. I don't know why Microsoft thinks this is so old, but take a look at, let's do maybe printer properties. We'll do that. And we're just talking to the printer, right? I'm just clicking through some things here. That's all I really want to do. Maybe I'll open up the print queue. I'm going to talk to the printer here, right? I don't want to open up the HP app because that'll throw a little confusion into this. Maybe we'll print a test page. We'll do that. So I'm going to close this and we'll just take a look at what happened on the network. And maybe we'll stop this because this is very busy. So in preface to this, maybe I'll point out that my IP address right now is 192.168.18.19. And I can take a look at the other nodes that I might be talking to. This is very dangerous. Don't attack my network, okay? And we can see that I'm actively talking to a couple of nodes here. One of them is this 74. And I think that's our printer. So if I take a look at this conversation here, and all of these conversations, maybe we'll do this, we'll go right to where that conversation starts. There we go. So I opened up the printer preferences, right? And here is this conversation. Now this is the beginning of a TCP connection. Now I'll link stuff in the show notes for you, but this is the way that we see a TCP application starting with the SYN, SYNAC, ACK connection handshake. So this is a TCP connection, and we can see that I am sending a lot of traffic back and forth to my printer. And so I asked a bunch of questions of my printer. And you can see that as I was clicking through this, right, there's an awful lot going on here. Now, what it's doing is really sort of immaterial. But the point is that when you're talking to your printer, it's not just this mystical, magical connection. When you install drivers and when you install the application that monitors your ink and your paper and everything else and allows you to send stuff to the printer, it's an application. It's a user-based application that is communicating with your printer. Now, one of the support protocols that's often used to communicate with a printer is Simple Network Management Protocol. So this is one of these ones that I was talking about earlier. Now, this one is not talking to this particular printer. It's trying to communicate with the other printers that I have in my installed in my machine. But the point is that this is an SNMP connection that is trying to pull data from the printer. Okay, let's do something else. So we'll clear this, and what I'll do now is I'm going to open up a browser and then we'll just go to a couple of web pages here. All right, so I've started my Wireshark capture over again to get rid of all that stuff. Let's go to a couple of web pages. So I think YouTube will serve to show us a couple things, right? So all I've done is open up YouTube, and there's nothing here to see really on the screen at this point, but let's take a look at what Wireshark has done just at this point. Just opening that browser. Now, not all of this is the browser, right? But a lot of it is. And you can see if I take a look at, if I look for DNS, look at all this domain name service traffic. And we can see right at the top here, I'm looking for YouTube because YouTube is a name. Computers do not understand names. What we want is the IP address, and that's the whole point of DNS. So I ask for the IP address for YouTube, and a name server somewhere comes back with the answer. There they are. There's all the IP addresses that I might use to connect to YouTube. Okay, so now if I get rid of this, I can see that I also have a tremendous number of TCP-based applications. These are all doing the client server, all doing the sockets, all doing the source and destination IP address, source and destination port number. Let's open up a video. Maybe I'll look for that fabulous networking channel, Bruce Hartpence. Hey, look, what's on my network at layer 3? All right, that was last week's video, but let's see what Wireshark is telling us now. Well, now the stream actually started, right? And now we are introducing more protocols such as QUIC. We can see here. So there are ads that run, there are videos that run, there are other videos that populate the interface to, what you want to watch next, other things that are associated. So a whole bunch of other connections. And in this particular case, we see that QUIC is using UDP. And so another set of port numbers and another layer 4 protocol. UDP and TCP are completely different. Well, I think that'll do it for what's on our network at layer 4. We were just trying to hit the highlights right here. We're just scratching the surface. As I said, I'll provide starter links if you want to know more about TCP or UDP or DNS. So those will be in the show notes. There are a lot of important ideas that are associated with applications. Some of them are user-based, some of them are not. They all use the client-server architecture, and now we've got that introduction to ports at layer 4. And remember that lots of things happen in order for you to connect. No application survives on its own. No matter how good the application is, you first have to join a network. Then you have to find out IP addresses and things of that sort. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this sort of introduction to what's on my network at layer 4. And remember that I'm sitting on my home network. So you've got the same stuff going on your network. Talking to your printers, playing games, or connecting to the web. All of those things require applications and connections at layer 4. Hey, like and subscribe if you thought this was interesting. Coming up, we shall build. I think I'm going to add some stuff to my network, maybe improve things if I can. We'll do some speed tests along the way, and we'll talk about wireless. But until then, may those home networking packets always reach their destinations.